Hi team, and welcome back to Winners and Losers, where we break down the latest and greatest Premier League action. Now, of course, the focus has been on transfers in recent weeks, but match day one of the Premier League has happened, and I'm joined by Joseph Tomlinson to run it up. How are you, sir?
I've been better, mate. I've been better, as I'm sure everybody's expecting, but no running and hiding from me today, as I usually get accused of on every show whenever I go on holiday for a week.
Yeah, as well as discussing Aleksandar Mitrovic and Steven Gerrard on this show, we thought we'd cram in a mini how to fix on Manchester United. We missed our annual fix on Manchester United on the podcast in this off-season due to resource, but we're going to do it here for you as a little sweetener. It is match day one after all, or post-match day one. And we need to cash in on Joe's malaise before he either goes into hiding, like he said, or Manchester United actually turn it around under Erik Ten Hag. Let's start with the talking point then, which is obviously that loss to Brighton at Old Trafford. But the emphasis quickly moved on from the result and to the squad that Erik Ten Hag is heading into the new season at the helm of, with Gary Neville saying this.
I think it would have been a shock to him. Obviously, they're promising pre-season. But I think anybody who watched those Manchester United players that he's been handed as his squad on the start of the season through the last year or so will recognise that that's a familiar performance. And the people above him should have known that that was an unacceptable situation to hand Erik Ten Hag that squad at the start of the season. It needed improving more than it has been already. Now, obviously, there's 2 or 3 weeks to go in the transfer window, but he needed 3 or 4 weeks to be able to work with them. And I'm sure there's an element of every new coach that comes in thinks they can do better with the players that are there than the last coach because they believe they're a better coach, and that's probably the case with this. But the reality of it is I think he's seen what those players are today.
So there we have it, 2 buzzwords commonly associated with Manchester United in the last 2 years. Unacceptable and needed more. Joseph, before we move on to the recruitment side of things, let's quickly touch upon the performance then. What did you make of the loss?
I expected Manchester United to drop points here. I think I predicted 2-2, and I was not looking forward to it, was not confident going into the game. I had very little hope, and it was proved correct. Manchester United were an absolute shambles from front to back, particularly in midfield. But like I tweeted during the game, it's kind of to be expected. This is 9 of the 11 starters against Brighton that produced one of the worst season in Manchester United history. We've still got Fred and Scott McTominay playing as a double midfield pivot. Erik Ten Hag is not a magician. He's not a miracle worker. He has been dealt an absolute shitter of a hand by the board at this stage. I was watching the game getting more and more irritated, and by the end of it, I was kind of like, giving up with the season. Honestly, I'm at a stage where I've given up with the season after 90 minutes of football against Brighton.
New levels of exasperation reached already then, and that is a record for you. Albeit, yeah, that's been the predominant emotion over the last 2 seasons, right? Exasperation. What did you make of Christian Eriksen and Lisandro Martinez's debuts then?
I thought Christian Eriksen was a lot better when he dropped deeper. I thought he was Manchester United's best player. It didn't work having him as that false 9, but I thought when he played in sort of deeper midfield role to conduct stuff, he was easily United's best player. I thought Lisandro Martinez was okay. He got bullied a couple of times by Danny Welbeck. Should have probably given away a penalty, if we're all being honest with ourselves. But overall, the rest of the team, just front to back, just so bad. Like, so bad.
Well, I think Roy Keane agreed with you, and this is what he had to say after the game.
You have to have a certain character to play for Man United. When there is 65, 75,000 at the match and they're moaning and groaning or they get on your back, you can stick your chest out and say, I can deal with this. I can deal with this expectation. You don't necessarily always have to be the best player in English football, but you can deal with that expectation. This group of players, we keep seeing it. We see it today. They can't deal with even a setback. Okay, Brighton come and they're neat and tidy, and even when they go a goal up, just relax. You don't panic. All of a sudden they give another goal away, and then they're chasing again the second half. Man United have to be better than that. They have to be.
So there we have it. Despite a change of management and a reshuffle at boardroom level, we've picked up where we left off pretty much. And like Joe said, unsurprising given the inertia around the summer transfers. But, Manchester United fans, there's still some time for course correction. Although we are now at the point where we're expecting new transfers to come in and hit the ground running straight away and have a disproportionately positive impact. Never the healthiest outlook, is it? So let's start, Tomlinson, before we make our suggestions, by auditing some of the latest rumours, because news did break yesterday, and I'm trying to keep a straight face here, that Manchester United had a £7.6 million bid rejected for Bologna's Marco Arnautovic. And then David Ornstein tweeted this morning that the club had made a move for Juve's Adrian Rabiot. Okay, so like I said, before we get into our suggestions, thoughts on those two players, please, Ginger Maestro.
I mean, what's going on? What is going on? It's honestly so bad. It's now at the point where it's almost a spoof of Manchester United, isn't it? Marco Arnautovic, yes, he scored goals in Serie A last season, but we wouldn't have signed Arnautovic in his absolute prime. It wouldn't have happened. He wasn't good enough for Manchester United then, let alone now at the age of 33? I think he turns 34 throughout this season. Not only is he not technically good enough for Manchester United, also brings with him, I think, quite a lot of baggage in terms of dressing room and persona and character. You know, Manchester United have talked about this cultural reset, and we've seen players leave the club this summer that were perceived as dressing room problems. You know, people perceive Paul Pogba as being a huge problem in the dressing room, and United are now going to go out and bring in Marco Arnautovic and Adrian Rabiot. Adrian Rabiot arrives with one of the most questionable reputations.
He's got a rap sheet, hasn't he? An extensive rap sheet.
In terms of like off-the-field drama that you'll ever see in football. A mother who's his agent, who has continuously caused problems at every club he's been at. A questionable record for Juventus over the last couple of years, despite starting numerous games. You know, I don't think he's mobile enough to play in a midfield pivot position by himself, for one, and this probably signals the end of the Frenkie de Jong pursuit. I mean, would United really be agreeing fees with Juventus for Rabiot if de Jong was still on the table? I highly doubt it. So overall, an absolute fest, with Manchester United panicking yet again, signing emergency strikers yet again, despite the fact they've had 5 years to plan for this situation. It's not as if they've not known Man United aren't going to have strikers going into the new season. Cavani's gone, Greenwood's unavailable, you know, Ronaldo's 37, Martial has put together about 30 appearances in the last 2 years, and United had gone into the season gone, oh my God, I can't believe we haven't got a striker option. What's going on? What is going on? Half a decade we've had now of emergency signings. Igalo, Falcao, Cavani. You could argue Zlatan was an emergency signing. Even Cristiano Ronaldo at 37. There's no long-term strategy there, is there? I mean, I'm beyond the pale now, Hamill. I'm beyond it.
I mean, United have had a long-standing tradition, stretching back to Fergie, haven't they, of bringing in older, wiser heads to help flesh out that attacking roster. I'm thinking Henrik Larsson, I'm thinking Michael Owen. You've already mentioned a few names there, in Zlatan and Cavani. But yes, Igalo and Arnautovic not in the same league as these players. And while those players could have been relied upon as decent rotation options, there's now going to be an expectation for whoever comes in to contribute in a meaningful way, which is really alarming, isn't it? And Adrian Rabiot, who you mentioned there, we were excited about him when he was at PSG, weren't we? We thought he had a big, bright future. There's been a bit of stasis at Juventus, but still has his qualities, mainly in the physical departments. Always, ranks pretty highly for pressures, for tackles, things like blocks and aerial duels, won the nitty-gritty side of football. But you already have a couple of guys who are pretty good at that, who fall short in other departments like ball progression, like progressive passes. So, no, I'm not sure he's a great like for like when it comes to Frenkie de Jong, who we're also, like I said at the start of the show, expecting to be transformative. If he was anything short of transformative, United still would need another 3-4 players. I think you said 6, didn't you? So yeah, let's move into our how to fix. This feels like a good natural segue. Only Martinez and Malacia have arrived for transfer fees so far then, Tomlinson. And let's assume, like you said, Frenkie isn't going to happen. And you've stepped in as sporting director. You're not signing Arnautovic. You're not signing Rabiot. You've pulled the plug on them. Who would your top 3 targets be? Let's keep it to 3 because this is quite a sizable task.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible. I don't think you can get it down to 3, to be honest with you. I think a new goalkeeper's needed, new right back, 2 new central midfielders, at least 1 forward. To do it in 3's almost impossible, I think. A right back, I honestly don't know. I really don't know where United go from here. It looks like Ethan Laird has joined Watford on loan. That's probably expected to be confirmed over the next 24-48 hours. Obviously, Aaron Wan-Bissaka isn't fancied by the club at all. Diogo Dalot yesterday against Brighton. I mean, the shortcomings were exposed quite badly, weren't they? I think most of Brighton's best work came down that side. In midfield, I thought Fabian Ruiz would have been a really good option for Manchester United as an alternative to Frenkie de Jong. But it seems like PSG have usurped United in that department. And PSG have really shown Manchester United, Luis Campos has shown John Murta exactly how to overhaul a midfield in one summer. You've seen Renato, you've seen Fabian Ruiz, and you've seen Vitinha arrive in one summer when they didn't need as much of an overhaul as United. United need a full overhaul and have signed, Christian Eriksen, who wants to play in the 10 space. I don't know where Manchester United go in that midfield department now, having missed out on Fabian Ruiz, having missed out on Frenkie de Jong. Do they then turn to, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, who's a totally different style of player, very much opposed to the sitting deep and progressing the ball from the first line? I don't think that's where Sergej Milinkovic-Savic is at his best. I think he's best driving forward and working in and around the edge of the box. I don't know what you think from a neutral's perspective, but that feels like a totally different profile of player to the profiles of player of Frenkie de Jong, who's also a totally different profile to Adrien Rabiot.
Yeah, I think your PSG comparisons are interesting, and if Erik ten Hag had someone like Luis Campos at the club working on targets for him beforehand, you wouldn't find yourself in this situation. And obviously, Manchester United have been linked with Paul Mitchell in the past, haven't they? Who is doing a brilliant job at Monaco by sort of every metric.
Yeah.
So maybe pursuing someone of his caliber at boardroom level might be a good place to start. But we've said this 100 times, and I'm really trying to find ways to offer our audience new value whilst talking about Manchester United without gouging my eye out with a screwdriver. But yes, Sergej Milinkovic-Savic, 22 goals and assists last season, has played in a variety of positions in his 7 seasons at Lazio. So I actually do think he could play deep and progress play. We've seen him sort of put up Declan Rice and Kovacic-esque numbers before in terms of progressing the ball through midfield. But he does seem to be doing his better work in his late 20s. I think he's 27 now, further up the pitch. So I agree in that sense. Now, someone that we put forward on Scout Report, who I hadn't really thought of as a possibility the other week over on Euro Football Daily, is Brian Cristante over at Roma. Now, he's not the sexiest name, and of course, Roma sort of ambled into European spots, didn't they, in Serie A last term, despite winning the Conference League as well. But his transformation from an 8 into an out-and-out holding player under Jose Mourinho was pretty impressive. And he was always fit and always available for Jose Mourinho last season, put up more midfield minutes than anyone else in that squad. Defensively was very reliable, very sound, won the ball back 4.5 times per 90 compared to Frenkie de Jong's 2. And like I said, he's a multifaceted player. In the past, he's put up sort of Moussa Dembele-esque levels of dribbling numbers. Used to complete 2 per 90. Used to put up 7 progressive carries. That has dropped off now. He finds himself a little bit deeper on the pitch, but he has made up for that in several other regards. For example, he ranked 2nd last season despite having that more reserved starting place for passes into the final third with an unbelievable 7.5 per 90. That's the same as Manchester City's Rodri, to give you some perspective. So maybe there's more to get from him. It would be an out there signing considering who you've been linked with. But I like his numbers. I like his profile nonetheless. So some food for thought there. Joe, what do you think when it comes to the forward departments?
Forward department's a mess, isn't it? It's an absolute mess right now. I'm really not sure where Manchester United turn. They're already scrambling in the bargain bucket, aren't they? Right now, if we're being honest, they are scrambling around in the $2 clearance aisle of Aldi. But I think they've just missed out on they've had so much time to get deals done, and they've missed out on so many targets at this stage. It was obvious United needed a striker earlier in the window, even before the window opened. They should have been on to Darwin Núñez before the window opened, before Liverpool decided they were going to make a move for him. They should have had a deal in place with Darwin Núñez. Scamacca has gone to West Ham. I'm not saying Scamacca would have been the perfect fit for Manchester United, and I don't even think he's necessarily going to come in and be a superstar for West Ham, but surely would be a better option signing, 23-year-old Scamacca who has room to improve and has a profile that was very solid in Serie A than 33-year-old Marko Arnautovic for 18 or 15 million euros, however much it ends up being. I think there's huge problems in the striking department because Manchester United now have no options in the market because they've left it so late. And I don't know where they turn.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. They have missed out on a bunch of B-sides, let's say, that would have been useful additions to the squad. And you're now looking at sort of, I don't know, players that have been on the peripheries at big clubs. I mean, if you're going to go and get Aleksandar Rabiot and Marko Arnautovic, then I think I'd rather opt for Mauro Icardi, who comes with a similar amount of baggage, but has at least has better pedigree in that department, but probably doesn't fit in with the cultural overhaul that was the strong emphasis of this summer. Again, like you've already mentioned, probably now United find themselves backed into a corner, don't they? And will have to overpay for Benjamin Sesko, who was being touted as the next big thing. Of course, the start of the season very well at Salzburg, finished it pretty strongly with Salzburg, got some Champions League minutes under his belt, and is a young player that maybe will appeal to Erik Ten Hag because of his sort of tactical versatility, the fluidity he can play all across that front line with. So there we have it. Cristante, Benjamin Sesko. Did you suggest a defender?
That's grim. Just get Frankie. Get it done. I've give up with the club, mate. I've give up the club. We need to move on because I'm about to blow a gasket. Right.
We want to know who you would bring in to Manchester United. At home in the comments below. You've got until September 1st. So yeah, get your due diligence done. Right, let's move on to our winners then. We'll keep these sections pretty short. I've gone for Mitrovic / Haaland. A great weekend for the big target man. Joe, let's start with Mitrovic, who's got a brace against Liverpool in Saturday's early kickoff. What did you make of his performance and that of his teams?
Yeah, do you know what? I was surprised by Fulham, actually pleasantly surprised. I think maybe I've underestimated them, and I think a lot of people might have underestimated Marco Silva's ability as a coach coming into this season, and maybe even underestimated Aleksandar Mitrovic a little bit. I think a lot of people looking at that last output in his Premier League season, was it 3 goals, 3 assists, might have thought, he's not going to be able to do it in the Premier again. He's a bit of a championship expert. I think maybe we've undercooked him a little bit. I thought he was really impressive against one of the league's best defences, certainly the league's best centre-back in Virgil van Dijk, and he won 11 aerial duels. Nobody on the pitch even came close to that. And, won a penalty, converted it really well, towered over Trent Alexander-Arnold for his header as well. I think all of his shots came from inside the area. I think Fulham might surprise a few teams. I still expect them to go down, but I think they might surprise a few teams. I think Aleksandar Mitrovic is actually going to have a really good campaign up front, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I was surprised by their athleticism. And obviously we know that Marco Silva, from interviewing Fulham players in the past, is a taskmaster behind the scenes, double sessions, so on and so forth. But they started out at a really good pace, didn't they? And I want to shout out Kenny Tete as well, right back, who put in a lovely cross for Mitrovic's header. Hung it up nicely at the back post. Alexander-Arnold left, found wanting, really, wasn't he? Like you said. That was the only chance he created, but he also clocked up 5 tackles as well. So they were nice and compact for the most part at the back, or as compact as you could expect against a team like Liverpool. Now let's move on then to Haaland. After his brace against the West Ham, people were absolutely salivating, gushing over the Norwegian, weren't they? And this is what his manager had to say about the fanfare.
Listen, 1 week ago, when he missed the chance that we had, it was a failure, and the people say he's not going to adapt in the Premier League, and everybody laughs of him. And now he's going to Thierry or Cristiano Ronaldo. Take time. So it's the first Premier League game. He's 21 or 22 years old. He has a long career, and when he's going to retire, going to hopefully stay many years here in Man City, but we're going to analyze what he has done. So be calm. So the important is the inside of us. We know what you have to do. We know the quality that he has, and alongside for the other guys, and after that we'll see.
Before we hear from the man himself then, Joseph, what did you make of his performance against West Ham?
Scary sight. That was a really scary sight, because not only did you see a lot of his explosiveness and his pace over short distances when running in behind, I thought his link-up play was pretty good. And I think that was a question mark a lot of people had, whether or not he could get involved in build-up play. And I thought he did it really, really well. And when he starts making them angled curve runs, and Kevin De Bruyne can find him, this is going to be a long old season for teams that don't support Manchester United. I also want to just quite quickly shout out Darwin Núñez from the earlier Liverpool game. I thought he was really impressive when he came on. His finish was obviously pretty cheeky, and Gabby Jesus. So it's been a good weekend for strikers, isn't it, at their clubs?
So, we might as well have just dedicated that section to number 9s then. Yeah, fair play. Let's hear from Haaland then, who is safe to say was unperturbed by all the fanfare, all the chat, and was disappointed not to get more goals.
Yeah, I could. If you saw the Gundo right before I went off, I should have been there. So, but that's how it is.
Steady with the language.
Sorry. Not good language in this country.
Let's move on to our losers now then, Joseph, and it is Aston Villa / Steven Gerrard, whose win percentage has plummeted to 35% in the league with the Villains as a result of his opening day loss to relegation favourites Bournemouth. This is what he had to say in the aftermath.
All the stats will suggest that we had control and possession and we got to the right areas, but when you get there, you've got to have them game changes in your team. You've got to have them moments of quality, and it was missing today.
Now, I think there was a bit of glossing over the cracks there in that interview, because Gerrard might well say that his team dominated proceedings, but they were nullified, weren't they, in the final third? 2 shots on target, which generated an XG of 0.49 to Bournemouth's 0.59, may I note. And he also was complaining about a lack of game changes despite having Ings, Bailey, Coutinho, Watkins and Buendia in his ranks. And if you can't be getting more out of that roster of attacking talent at this stage against that opposition, then I think you're in for an underwhelming season. And it's got to be said, Aston Villa, Wolves, Leicester, they were on our shortlist for underperformers this campaign. Tomlinson, what did you make of the result then?
Worrying. I think that was a worrying start for Steven Gerrard this season. I think he now matches Gary Neville's record in La Liga for Valencia, doesn't he? Or something similar to that, I read. But you know what? I want to put a bit of praise on Bournemouth as well. We can talk about Aston Villa being very poor. Bournemouth on an opening day win is huge. Every point is going to matter for them come the end of the season. Like you said, Aston Villa found it really hard in the final third. And I think that was largely down to what was a really impressive sort of back 3, back 5. You know, Mepham in particular was very, very solid. Lerma, who I think we were kind of unsure about whether or not he could do it, looked again much more disciplined, much more focused. There was some really standout performances from new signings like Marcus Tavernier. I think he completed 6 dribbles in the game, progresses the ball really nicely. I think he created 3 chances as well. So for Bournemouth, this was a huge win. A huge win, and I think Scott Parker needed it to a level because the summer, recruitment-wise, has been extremely questionable for Bournemouth. I think most people would have said it's been one of the worst recruitment drives of the summer of any Premier League team, and he's kind of come out there and said, you know what, yes, we haven't recruited well, but what I've got at my disposal, I'm able to coach really, really well, and maybe we've, again, like Fulham, slightly underestimated how good they were in the Championship last season.
I mean, as we record this, news is coming in, isn't it, that they've agreed a £12.6 million deal with Feyenoord for Marco Senesi, I think it's pronounced. It also looks like they've wrapped up a deal for Barcelona goalkeeper Neto. So they are adding to the squad. They obviously still are working hard to improve the team. But yes, still worrying nonetheless, although quelled some of that with a great opening day performance. And fair play to Scott Parker for sort of deploying that back 3, back 5, because I don't think it was something that they leaned into last season, particularly with Jefferson Lerma on the right-hand side of that defence, because his disciplinary record was poor last time he was in the Premier League, but he's clearly been working closely with him to rectify that, and a good solid performance to build on. And they don't have that first win hanging over them, do they? Like we've seen that haunt teams in previous campaigns, so good to get that out of the way early doors. And this is what Scott Parker had to say about his team's performance.
I thought we started the game electric in that sense, and then a goal always helps us in them situations. I thought today the team, in terms of taking on board the element of what we needed tactically, I thought out of possession we was very, very good and nullified them to really a stubborn side to us. We can improve in certain areas, certainly in the attacking phase, and certainly at times on the counter we can improve them moments, but we're still early in that. But yeah, overall the goal was massive for us, really.
All right then, Tomlinson, let's wrap up the show. And this season, we're going to rotate moment of the week with fantasy football because, of course, we did start a league and thousands of you joined. Thank you very much for getting involved. And I wanted to shout out Aidan Belcher and Johan Mespak for leading the Football Daily Fans League after week 1. 98 points apiece. Extremely impressive. I can confirm my ranking is 4,219th. So maybe these boys should be presenting winners and losers moving forward. They clearly know more than I do. Tomlinson, we've got anything else to push across Football Daily Euro, Football Daily, etc.?
Go and check out When You Talk on Friday if you haven't already. I sat down with Gary Neville and Jamie Carragher and we ranked each club's summer transfer window. This was before Arnautovic and Rabiot, and they already had United in D. So I would imagine that would have slipped to E by the time this comes out.
Quality stuff. All right, like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, guys, and we'll catch you in next week's Winners and Losers. Bye-bye.